Hello, hello, crafty chicks. This is Grace here at the Comfy Nest with Grace. I'm going to be working in one of my newer art journals. This is actually a book I got for free at a thrift store. It was in a free bin, and I've been using it since I went on vacation with my sisters. We crafted a little during that vacation, and I've been adding pages just periodically in this book. And today I wanted to work with some of Tim Holtz's paper dolls. So I picked out a couple of paper dolls to work with, but first we need a background. So I'm using some Tim Holtz paper and scraps of paper and Mod Podge, which is a decoupage medium. You can use any decoupage medium you want, but Mod Podge is a great starter, especially if you're new to this, because it's very inexpensive and it's very easy to get. So it's a great way to start out. This is the matte version of Mod Podge. So I'm using a paintbrush and that Mod Podge to stick these papers down as a start to the background for this project. Now you can apply your decoupage medium either to your surface, which in this case is the book, or to the paper. There's no right or wrong way to do it, just whatever you prefer. And sometimes I do it one way, sometimes I do it the other way. But you want to get it saturated well enough to stick on well in every place, but you don't need to, have bubbling over amounts of decoupage medium, just enough to wet it. Okay, so I'm just going to keep on layering a bit of paper here and there to add some color and some visual interest to this background. The paper dolls that I chose, one of them is a couple of girls, and they are very bright. It's basically mostly white and with some grays and some darker colors in there, but they're basically very bright. The other two pictures, it's a woman and a child, and they're in like traveling clothes, and they're very dark. So it'll be interesting to see how this all comes together, and if I can create a background that's going to complement both of them. We'll see when we get to that part, but right now I'm just adding a bit of these colorful papers in the background, like I said, to add visual interest. Okay, now that I have some papers applied to the background, it's time to add some more color, and I'm going to use paint to do this. So I generally will grab paints that complement the papers that are already down. And in this instance, I grabbed like a dark, deep colored red. I think it's like a dark mauve, and some yellow and some brown. And I'm just going to start applying it, you guys. I apply it everywhere where the paper is not, to balance out the paper and to give it a background. And I just want to get coverage on the book page. A lot of times I really like when the book page words or whatever's on the book page show up in the background. You're not going to see any of that on this particular project because, first of all, the paints are very dark that I'm putting over the book page. Plus, you're going to see I just layer a lot of different elements onto this project, and that is a true mixed media project where you're using different mediums, different craft supplies basically, and layering them on top of each other to create something that's visually appealing to you. Now, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so there is no right or wrong here. I would, if you have not art journal before, or if you're just getting started with it, I would just say just feel really free to do whatever comes to your heart and mind when you're creating. Don't put too much pressure on yourself for anything really, especially when you're just getting started, because it's going to take some time for you to create a comfort zone for yourself and to develop a style that you like, or a type of project that you like to do, and what types of supplies you like to use. I feel like I'm always discovering and exploring, and sometimes changing my mind based on new things that new products that I might have discovered, or things that I want to explore and see how they work together. And an art journal is a great place to practice those things because it's just for you. You don't have to show it to anybody else. Clearly, I'm showing you mine to help demonstrate and hopefully inspire you to start your own journal. But you don't have to show yours to anybody. It truly is for you to express yourself, to practice, to play with your supplies, and just create pretty little things that you enjoy. So I hope you'll be encouraged and inspired to do so. So now that I have some basic colors on the parts where it was just book page. I'm using the paintbrush to stipple some of that yellow paint on there. And so stippling, I'm just pouncing the brush bristles up and down so it gives it a bit of texture. It also is giving it not full brush stroke coverage, right? It's just stippled on there. And now I'm using the red color to stipple on there, and I'm really focusing on the transition between the paint and the paper, the decorative paper that I decoupaged down. I want to make that look seamless, and so I'm trying to cover the areas where those two converge, the transition between the paper and the book page. So using the paint to cover those lines, and then also pulling that paint over onto the paper so it looks really natural. So it looks really natural and all cohesive. Okay, here come my people. Here come my little paper dolls. And you can see the girls are very bright. And then the woman and the child standing there with the dog, they're very dark. So I'm going to put the girls on one side of the page, the other people on the other side of the page, and really, I want to create a background that complements them. And I don't want them just floating in the middle of the page. So I'm actually going to add more paper to the bottom to give them almost a surface to stand on. Because if I just stick them in the middle of this background the way it is, they're just going to be floating in the middle of the page, which will look very unnatural. So I add a bit more paper underneath. Before I put the people down, I'm going to put a little more paper underneath on the bottom to create something for them to stand on. And so right now I'm just playing with these elements to see which papers do I want to use, how do I want to stack them, where exactly do I want to position my paper dolls on the page. So this is just playing. This is just taking scraps of paper or whatever it is that you want to use, and before you glue anything down, just placing things down to see what you like, what appeals to you, what feels good to you. So that's what you're witnessing me do right now, is just to try to figure out where exactly I want to put them and how on the page. I want to thank you for tuning into this and to sticking with me through it. I hope you're enjoying to hear my thought process as I go about doing this. And I'd be so honored if you would go over onto my page, The Comfy Nest with Grace, and follow and like the page so that you get some more of that in your newsfeed and so that we can stay connected. Okay, now that I know basically where I'm going to position my people and the surface, the paper that I picked so they have something to stand on, I'm going to grab some stamps and some ink pads here. This is another craft supply that you can use in your journaling. It's going to add some more visual interest to your background. I wanted to add some more texture, the look of texture, and so I use this stamp that looks like stonework, and I'm careful to avoid getting ink on the edges of the stamp because I don't want any squared off part of the stamp to show up. I just want the middle part of the stamp image to show. So I'm just stamping in a few locations, knowing that I'm going to put a little bit of paper over the bottom and the people are going to be situated kind of where I've chosen. I'm trying to stamp in other places so that it shows up in the background. The other stamp that I choose here is a swirly stamp. I like to use these swirlies. I think they're very whimsical. And because we have those two ladies on the left-hand side, the two girls that are standing together especially, remember, they're very bright. So I chose a white ink stamp pad and these swirlies to complement the girls, basically, because the stamp is white. It's going to show up really well on this dark background that I've created. And the swirl is very feminine, I think. So it's going to complement those two really feminine girls standing there in their dresses, and they're all prettied up. So I feel like it's just going to complement them. And you can see I'm just randomly applying that swirl in a couple of places on this dark background so it shows up really well. I think part of what I love so much about art journaling is that we get to pull from this, generally crafters, we have these huge stashes of craft supplies that we own, and we get to pull from all of them and bring them together and use them in whatever way we like in a private place in our little journal that we can put on the shelf when we're done. And it's a great place, like I said, to just practice and explore and discover and use up all of these great supplies that we've been adding to our collection. You can see me here. What I'm doing is basically, I kept this in the video because a lot of times I get the question, how do you clean your stamps? I just use any disinfectant wipe brand on the back of that stamp to clean it. So you just saw me wipe that ink, and I generally do it right away because it's easy to do while the ink is still wet on that stamp. And I decided to add another stamp. I felt like it needed a little more. So I grabbed a different stamp set and pulled one off of there. And this is, you can see it's really hard to get off of that plastic film that it comes on the first time that you use it. They're very hard to get off of there, but don't worry, you won't rip it. It won't stretch on you. These stamps are really very sturdy. But the first time that you use it, you'll see me here. I have a sanding block and I'm sanding the stamp surface. This was something I learned a long time ago, that when you have a stamp and you're using it for the very first time, it really does help to put a little bit of sanding to that surface before you use it, because it helps the ink to grip to the stamp. So there you go. If you didn't know that, if you've had trouble in the past with stamps, really accepting your ink pad or your paints, that might be wise. So try to give them a little light sanding before you use them. Here, this was another feminine swirl. I don't know what else to call them, but they're just a decorative swirl design. And I decided to add more of that bright white ink, but just choose a different design, a different stamp, again, for interest, visual interest. Cleaning it off with that same disinfectant wipe, and we're ready to go on gluing some things down. So I'm using this art glitter glue that I love so much. You'll find it in my Amazon store. A lot of people have asked me about it. I saw some other crafters using it, decided to purchase it. I feel like it's a little expensive, but it is my favorite glue. It works really well. It comes with a fine, the bundle that I bought comes with a fine tip applicator, and I love that. And it sets pretty quickly, and it's a great consistency. It's not too thick and it's not too thin. It's just perfect in my opinion. So it's just a glue that I really love. Again, if you go to my Amazon store, shop/The Comfy Nest, so amazon.com/shop/The Comfy Nest, you will find that in the collection called Craft Supplies you'll love. And they're just craft supplies that I recommend or people ask me about frequently. Okay, so positioning my folks on here, and look at that kid with the dog. So stinking cute. I just love it. Again, just wanted to figure out where they were going, but I wanted to add more, you guys. Mixed media is so much fun. I have this bin full of embellishments that can be used, and I have this, you see there, it's like a metallic copper mesh that I got a long time ago from Stampin' Up. It's adhesive on its own, generally, and so it has like a sticky backing to it. So I added it to two places. It's metallic copper. It came in like 3 different colors. This one was metallic copper, and I stuck it to 2 different places behind, on the background. And then I felt like more texture was needed, so I would go digging through my bin of embellishments, and I think I end up pulling out a doily. If you watch here, I'm going to pull out yes, I go to a paper doily. These are fantastic to have. They're really inexpensive, and they can add a lot of like feminine touch and texture to your projects. So I'm going to pull one of these out. I want to position them behind the 2 girls on the left, just because, again, it's feminine. They're feminine. I think it's going to match really well. But because it's so bright, I think I end up distressing it with some ink. So you're going to watch me here. I'm pulling out some embellishments that I have and trying to decide placement and what do I want to use, what don't I want to use. I hope that by watching me go through this process that it helps you to realize that you don't always have to have a plan. You don't always have to know exactly what you're going to do. In fact, art journaling for me anyway is just having a general idea of something I want to use, which was the paper dolls in this instance, and then letting the paper dolls drive or steer me in a direction for everything else. So I don't know that I would have picked the doily out if it wasn't for those 2 sweet girls standing together, all dolled up. And for the two on the right, the two paper dolls on the right, they're in their traveling clothes, like they're going somewhere. So I went to my Tim Holtz embellishments that I bought, and I think one of them has to do with travel specifically. So I looked through those to see if there's something there that I can pull into this and use to make sense. It goes with the project, makes sense for the project, and it also just is something more to look at on the page. At the end of the video, I hope you'll stick around because I'm going to give you some great close-up shots, still images to look at that show you all of this texture that I'm talking about and all this layering, and you'll see how it all comes together. So I think that while I was working, I discovered or realized that the mesh, the roll of mesh that had the adhesive backing that I bought so long ago from Stampin' Up, that the adhesive wasn't working that great. So I grabbed my matte Mod Podge again, and I put it on the surface of the project, and then I put it over that mesh because the mesh has such open, it's got open holes, and so the Mod Podge goes right through it from the top to the bottom and really helps that mesh to stay on that page. So I did that first. Same thing on the left here. I used that Mod Podge to stick the doily down behind the girls. And I had already distressed that a little bit, the doily, so it didn't look so bright white. I added some brown inks to it. I tried to use the applicator and wasn't getting as much coverage as I wanted, so I just dipped the whole doily onto my ink pad, really, just to get some dark brown markings on it. No real sense of direction with that. I just dipped it in there to get some brown markings on it. Wasn't looking for full coverage, just to muck it up a little bit and to distress it. Now we're sticking our ladies down over the doily on top of the little paper surface that I created for them, making sure that that doily sticks down. And now we're going to use that art glitter glue to stick down our traveling duo here. I imagine it's mom and son with their dog. I don't know where they're going. Maybe they're going on vacation. I'm not sure. That's the fun part. You get to imagine for yourself what's going on here. I forgot to put my embellishment down. I had that large square embellishment with the numbers on it that I was going to put it down behind them, and I forgot to put it down. So here I go hunting in my supply stash here of that set of embellishments for something that would work. And this is, it is a Tim Holtz set of embellishments, and it's based on traveling, actually. So there are things like tickets and like train tickets and things like that in there. Itineraries, plane tickets in there. So I go into that stash and find a different embellishment since I forgot to use the one I originally planned on. And this one says Traveler, and I think it says 5 cents or something on it. It's like a vintage sign or maybe from a newspaper clipping. I don't know, but it works really well. The color matches really well with the project. And because it says Traveler, it's just perfect for these little paper dolls that I'm using. Okay, this next part of the project, I seriously love this point in any project, and it's when you do the markings on top. And I grabbed my Stippling crayons. They're called Woodies, and they are like a waxy crayon that does move. So if you wet it, it will distress and get like a charcoal pencil will. It will get smeared and smudged, so it gives you a smoky marking on your page. And I grabbed the white one again to complement. So we have a really dark background, but I chose those white swirly stamps. And now I'm adding some white edging around the corners and in between the two book pages, just to add more brightness. Now here come your still photos, your close-ups that will help you to see all the texture and the layers of craft supplies. So I hope you enjoy this close-up. And let me just say thanks for staying tuned into this for the duration. I really appreciated having your company, and I hope you'll come on over to the Comfy Nest with Grace and follow. You can also join my free group called the Crafty Chicks Club.